Oi! It's pancakes!
Alolan Pokemon, or I guess now I should say regional variant Pokemon. It was a super good idea! The Pokemon franchise has been ever inching towards that big, scary quadruple digit number when it comes to how many creatures they've got in their world. On top of this, some of their ideas for new ones tended to go between it's just an older design again, or this is stupid. So they came up with the idea of regional variants. Now they can go back to the older, tried and true designs that people are familiar with and put a spin on them. It's great, and it's accurate to real-world animals too. And so far, every Alolan and Galarian regional variant Pokemon has a reason for becoming the way it is. Even if it's not the most obvious thing, the reasons are still there. Most Pokemon have deep and/or cool reasonings for being what they are, and these variants were no different. There was, however, one Alolan Pokemon. One with no good reason for being what it is. At least no good canonical one. It's Alolan Raichu. It's got nothing origins. Also, this isn't an Alolan Raichu. Deal with it. I mean, the second worst ones, like Alolan Vulpix and Sandshrew, yeah, it's odd, but at least Alola has a snowy mountain that they live on, so that's the reason. But when it comes to Alolan Raichu, the reason is and I quote, "Even Pokemon researchers don't know why Raichu's form changed in the Alola region. The people of Alola seem unconcerned by the question. Their guess? Maybe it ate too many sweet and fluffy round pancakes. Quote, it loves pancakes prepared with a secret Alolan recipe. Some wonder whether that recipe holds the key to this Pokemon's evolution." Yeah, not kidding. A multi-septillion dollar company with entire teams for design and lore, and that's it. That's all they could come up with. They made this official. They hate you. No, they hate me. This whole blurb had to have been put in the game specifically for PokeTubers to never fully understand the ultimate curveball. Well, Game Freak. You've met your match because I have with me the ultimate counter. Just off screen. But I also have the ability to make things up that become very convincing when I find small amounts of facts to back them up. And through my charisma and video with a budget, I can make people believe my theories. So I'm going to deny Game Freak's rights to have a no-reason Pokemon. I will come up with a reason. It shall be discovered, no matter how stupid or backed up with nutrition science of all things it is. So without any further ado,
Let's just jump into it.
as there are a number of possibilities, and of course I'm saving the best one for last. That watch time, yo. So here's a useful tidbit of information. Alolan Raichu gained the Psychic type and uses it to float on its tail like a surfboard. But interestingly, Raichus and Pikachus, for that matter, have always surfed. Pokemon Yellow, yeah, a Gen 1 game, has a surfing Pikachu. And thus, there's also the Surfing Pikachu trading card. The anime also had an entire episode about a surfing Pikachu named Puka. And what gets crazy is that unlike every other Pikachu, this surfing Pikachu had psychic abilities. Plus, its eyes are blue, unlike every other Pikachu and Raichu, but very much like Alolan Raichu. Has the concept of Alolan Raichu been around this long? Probably not. Rather, Alolan Raichu is likely a reference to all this, but anyway, there's more. In Pokemon Stadium, Raichu surfs on its tail when it uses Surf because the animators cared. Why does Raichu know Surf? Because it's got its surfboard for a tail, duh. Here's another Dex entry. It focuses psychic energy into its tail and rides it like it's surfing. Another name for this Pokemon is Hodad. Hodad! Well, what's a Hodad? Well, thank goodness for Google, because a Hodad was a term back in the 50s when surfing was hip, because Nintendo wasn't making games yet. And a Hodad is basically a person who brings a surfboard to the beach, but never actually surfs. It's a poser, you could say. This could mean that the Alolan people see Raichu as a Pokemon that doesn't actually surf the waves, per se. After all, it surfs always, with its psychic brain waves rather than ocean waves. I guess that explains why Alolan Raichu can't actually learn surf. Alolan Raichu is a freaking poser. Well, all that did was prove that a psychic surfing Raichu isn't some sudden surprise idea. It has origins all the way back in Gen 1, but that doesn't explain how it came to be this way. And what pancakes have to do with it. But thankfully, we do have three, count 'em, three big theories as to why Alolan Raichu is the way it is.
What's the few?
Well, I guess it's more like two, count 'em, two. and a half. But they're all sort of interconnected, though not all of them involve pancakes.
Pancakes!
So first, the bit of evidence that's involved in all of the theories. That's Pikachu's involvement with humans. Pikachu are normally found in forests and a power plant that one time, but the vast majority of Pikachus in the Pokemon world live in the forests, in the wild. But in Pokemon Sun and Moon, they are in Howley City, the middle of the city even. It's an urban environment. Conveniently, it's also the only place to catch an Abra, the beginning of one of the most iconic Psychic-type Pokemon lines. So it could be that there is an increased amount of psychic energy in this city. Basically, there are other psychics in the area. Maybe that's because this area is better for psychicness growthitude. Hence, the Pikachu's gaining psychic powers, which sounds a little bit odd, but that's how evolution works. Well, minus the superpowers. But animals are heavily influenced by their environment, obviously. But not as much as humans influence animals. Have you seen these dogs that prove that evil exists in the world? Gross. But just like in the real world, breeding exists in the Pokemon world. I mean, I can't even tell you the astronomical amount of times people hatched a Pokemon for a nature or a shiny and then decided they didn't want it because it's not the right something, and they just released thousands upon hundreds of billions of Ponytas across the land. Dear God, all those animals must ravage the poor grassy plains. But oh well. Back to Pikachu, this is Alola, the island nation known for its incredible surfing scene. It's basically Hawaii, remember. While there is plenty of Mantine surfing, there is plenty of regular surfing too, hence all the surfboards in the area and surf-themed advertising. Thus, it's quite possible that the people of Alola have been breeding Pikachus specifically to surf, and in doing so, almost created a new species of Pokemon, the Alolan Raichu, who instead of using conventional surfboards like the other surfing Pikachu, evolved their own tailboards and the psychic powers to use those tailboards to surf always. And as we see in the anime, Alola is host to a yearly pancake race, a race where Pokemon carry pancakes around the island. And guess who's the champion? An Alolan Raichu. Who's to say this Alolan Raichu wasn't bred for this race specifically? After all, what's a better way to carry pancakes over dangerous terrain? There is none. The best way to carry pancakes over dangerous terrain is to just not touch the dangerous terrain because you just float over it. Now, a foot race where some of the members don't use their feet shouldn't be a thing, but whatever. The Raichus bred for surfing may have also been bred for racing in this way, with pancakes. Thus pancakes being involved? I guess? Though that doesn't exactly explain the eating of them. But in Pokemon Masters, we were able to get a small glimpse into lore hidden away from the mainline games. Hal's Pokemon is Alolan Raichu. He talks about how trash the explanation of its origins are, and I'd have to agree. However, he came up with his own ideas. Instead of Raichu's love of pancakes being its cause of evolution by itself, he thinks it's the scarcity of its favorite food. It's the lack of pancakes that caused the Raichus to become this way. So we're basically talking the Darwinian Finch theory. Hal talks about how Raichu actually is in steep competition for its food amongst other Pokemon. Therefore, it has evolved to reach the food faster than the others. And it's a pretty decent theory for a guy like Hal, but I still don't think this is quite right. It may be a part of the story, but it's certainly not the whole thing.
Pancakes must be involved.
And involved they are. Like I mentioned, Pikachus all over the world eat natural things, but in Alola, Pikachus live in the city, thus eating people food all the time. And as we see in the anime, the people of Alola, they love sharing their food with wild Pokemon. They see wild Pokemon as a family sort of thing. They're sharing berries and such, you know, but sometimes they're sharing malasadas and pancakes.
And it specifies too many and sweet and fluffy pancakes. Does it not?
So considering that it specifies many sweet and fluffy pancakes, maybe this is what we should look at. What makes pancakes specifically sweet? What makes pancakes specifically fluffy? Two things: sugar and gluten.
Sugar gluten? Sugoi!
I mean, a rat eating sugar? That's pretty much the same as humans eating straight sugar. It's wrong. All wrong. I mean, if humans already have several problems relating to the processing of sugar and gluten in large amounts, then just think about what happens to animals. In fact, there are several animals that can't even process these things at all.
Cats can't even taste sugar. It's no use to them. Get out of here.
Do you know the effects of excess sugar and gluten on the body? It's not pretty. I managed to lose 170 plus pounds with a large calorie surplus just by managing these things instead of calories. The body can't store excess calories if you don't let it via carbohydrates, which by definition are converted into sugar in the body. Plus, eating more speeds up your metabolism, whereas eating less slows it down. Complicated stuff. But I mean, fresh fruit, whole grain granola, a Kit Kat and a multivitamin. What's the difference? It's complicated, and not what this video is about. It's just hard for me not to talk about my life-changing favorite subjects like nutrition in extreme detail. I'm holding so much back, but this video is already so long. Let's focus.
Back at the pancakes.
Say Pikachus and Alola eat a load of sweet fluffy pancakes and similar types of food. Now, how would that give them psychic abilities? Well, psychic abilities tend to be powered by the brain, so I guess we can look at the effects of sugar and gluten on the brain specifically. But first, another tangent. Yes, of course the gluten-free movement is over-exaggerated extremely, especially by companies who benefit from it, and websites with fear-mongering clickbait. Is gluten killing your brain? No. Without celiacs or another major allergy, it's just a mild inconvenience to most. But these days, I'm seeing more and more people wholeheartedly against the whole gluten-free movement for no reason other than they're too lazy to actually look into it. Yes, you can still have problems with gluten even without celiac disease. People can be mildly or fully allergic to anything, and sometimes people can get inflamed by things just because the body is the most complicated biological machine in the known universe. So I mean, there are people who swell up in the sunlight. There are people allergic to oxygen. I'm flippin' autoimmune to my own pancreas, and you're telling me that it's impossible to have some sort of negative effect from a foreign protein entering the body and irritating the intestinal lining? Just because you read a commenter with an anime fedora avatar say so once? We're learning new stuff every day, especially in the field of nutrition and the human body. Much of which is disproving everything that we thought we knew decades ago. I could talk about just the explosion of nutrition information in the last decade, just flipping everything that we knew on its head, but again, that would take hours. All in all, don't be so adamantly against something just because it's not the most researched thing in the world yet. You're no better than the people who jumped on the trend for no reason, dude. Just as pseudo-intellectual. Heck, I'm pseudo-intellectual. This is a YouTube channel about Pokemon science, so I should probably get back to the Pokemon.
Pancakes!
Alolan Raichu. Put simply, what do sugar and gluten do to the brain? Well, first, here's a fun fact. Did you know that many life forms, humans included, have a second brain? We have a load of neurons around our guts, which helps control our digestive functions, because honestly, efficient digestion is one of the most complicated things, like ever. And this second brain is connected to our main brain, too, which is why several foodborne illnesses cause headaches and such. Now, you'd think that gut problems would cause a stomachache, but not always, and that's thanks to the second brain. Yay. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity, or NCGS, is no bueno, with symptoms like depression, a foggy mind, ADHD-like behavior, fatigue, and headaches, all present after consuming gluten. Yet, they do not test positive for celiac disease. You can think of all this as like a range. You got people who are perfectly fine eating gluten. They can eat as much as they want, no problem at all. And you got celiacs on the other total end of the spectrum. People who may actually die from it. And I guess according to some people, it's impossible to be absolutely anywhere in the middle. Climate change deniers, am I right? But just notice how this food-related list of symptoms affects the brain a ton. And I'm not even going into details or anything. But now, how about sugar? High blood sugar is a detriment to the body. Have you ever noticed when looking up a disease or a health issue of some kind online, and under the list of things that make you more likely to get it, you almost always see diabetes as one of them? Diabetes basically leads to all of the problems, and diabetes is essentially the inability to process sugar in your blood effectively or at all. But even for non-diabetics, when blood sugar is relatively high, the sugar in your blood in the form of glucose essentially crystallizes into sharp microscopic shards. And as they bump around your veins and arteries and capillaries, they cause teeny tiny micro damages. And if you've ever played Pikmin, you know that a lot of micro damage adds up. It's quite literally death
By 1,000 paper cuts.
but on the inside. You ever wonder why diabetics lose fingers, toes, sexual function, and eyesight all the time? It's because those are where our tiniest blood vessels are, and thus the ones that get damaged the most.
And if sugar is capable of doing all that, then you know it has some impact on the brain. Oh, like dopamine. Ah. Oh, dopamine. Ah.
Here's a not-so-fun fact. Some circles of health professionals are starting to call Alzheimer's disease and dementia two of the scariest and most heartbreaking things out there. Type 3 diabetes. Why? Well, because the leading theories that are really starting to get all this nailed down all point to too much sugar, or too often sugar, being the main culprit. We already mentioned the micro damage that obviously affects the brain too, but there's more. Previous theories about these terrible things all pointed towards a brain-eating plaque that we all develop to some level eventually. These problems arise when you get too much of this plaque, or you get this plaque too early in life. And wait a minute, plaque? Like that stuff that gets on your teeth and eats away at your teeth, especially when you consume sugar frequently? Yeah, that plaque, but in your brain! But unfortunately, we don't have brain brushes yet, do we? So our bodies have to have some means of cleaning all this plaque up, right? Oh, there is? Great! What is it? Insulin.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Insulin is the hormone the body uses to take the sugar in your blood and store it into your cells. So obviously it's good here. It's taking the blood sugar, which is causing the micro damage, and putting it away. But that's not all. Managing blood sugar is just the biggest job that insulin does, but its full list of functions is huge, and science is still adding to this list frequently, which brings us to why recently the leading theories shifted from it's this brain plaque specifically to it's what we're going to start calling type 3 diabetes. Because one of insulin's other jobs is to actually clean the brain of this plaque. But the problem is, insulin pretty much has a to-do list, and it will always prioritize the things on the top of its to-do list before bothering with the things below. Of course, it's always doing all of them a little bit, but you know what I mean. And its number one job is getting excess sugar out of the blood. And this plaque in the brain cleaning thing isn't likely even on the first page of its list. So even if you're not type 1 or 2 diabetic, and your blood sugar never reaches these crazy high diabetic levels, if it's still above what's considered normal fasting levels often enough, well, the insulin is going to prioritize that instead of the plaque. Every time you eat carbohydrates, you are distracting insulin from its other responsibilities. It, of course, as I said, does all of them all the time somewhat, but they are no longer priorities. Now just think about how we've been pushing and teaching, eat 11 servings of grain per day and several of fruit too. Also eat 6 times per day and such. And then we wonder why we're suddenly so obese, diabetic, and dementiaed, which is a word now. So all in all, too much sugar and or too often sugar plus brain equals bad. Gluten plus brain plus an even minuscule intolerance to it equals bad. A lot of animals have no benefit of eating gluten, and thus are often mildly intolerant to it because it's not what their ancestors' bodies are used to eating. Same with sugar, for that matter, which remember, grain always converts into. There's a reason grain-free pet foods are getting so popular, because it makes your pets way healthier and significantly reduces the risk of pet diabetes. Imagine that! You don't eat the thing that gives you diabetes and you're more likely to not get it? Whoa! So all in all, the Pikachus in Alola specifically have been eating a load of pancakes and other such people food. This causes some Pikachu and Raichu to slowly start developing health problems, especially in the headache and brain deterioration variety. So many brain problems. Is there a pun I can make here? Diabetes? Chew? I got nothing.
Pecan cake. Is that not what we're talking about?
So these poor, ill Pikachu and Raichu, due to feeling sick all the time, didn't get it on and breed as much as the ones who were doing just a little bit better with the people food. These were the ones with perhaps stronger brains. And these stronger brains eventually, over countless generations, led to Raichu's eventually gaining the psychic type, and the rest is history. That is certainly a theory. I hope you enjoyed this health lesson. I love talking about this stuff. It really gets your noggin jogging. So, you never stop using your noggin, and tell me how much of your time I wasted down below. Love you all, and toodles.